My name is Vishwas Lele and welcome to my course, Line of Business Applications with Power Apps and Flow. I'm CTO for Applied Information Sciences. I'm also an Azure MVP. Power Apps is a low-code platform for building custom business applications that can run on web, phone, and tablet devices. In a short time since the launch of this service, over 200,000 organizations are using this service to build custom business applications. This course is a quick introduction to building custom applications using the Power Apps service. Some of the major topics that we will cover include introduction to the Microsoft Business Application Platform that covers Power Apps and flows and connectors. We'll talk about Power Apps low-code development features. We'll look at a real-world example of building a line of business application using Power Apps. And finally, we'll be looking at the administration and application lifecycle management aspects of Power Apps. By the end of this course, you'll know how to build sophisticated custom business applications that can be deployed within your organization. No prior experience with mobile app development is required. From here, you should feel comfortable into diving into some very recently announced capabilities, such as the model-driven Power Apps and the common data service that brings the power of Dynamics 365 to Power Apps. I hope you'll join me on this journey to learn Power Apps with the Line of Business Apps with Power Apps and Flow course at Pluralsight. Welcome to the first module of this course. In this module, we'll be talking about Introduction to Power Apps and Flow. My name is Vishwas Lele. Let us get started. Before we talk about Power Apps, let me level set on a term that I will be using as part of this course called the Line of Business or LOB applications. Here are some key characteristics of a line of business application. Line of business applications, unlike a consumer application, are domain specific. So they could be financial services, healthcare, or a vertical that you may work in. They're transactional in nature. They integrate with one or more systems of records. So these systems could be heterogeneous systems on different technology platforms. Oftentimes, the line of business applications are riverbed representing the business process behind them. As a result, they're comprised of multiple screens. And then each screen is usually comprised of simple UI elements. Anytime we talk about business applications, we have to think about compliance. We have to think about policies like the data loss prevention or the DLP policy. We also have to think about governance, which means we want a central view of these applications, providing people access with these applications, and giving them access rights, etc. So these are the key characteristics of a line of business application. Let's look at some of the challenges we face with these line of business applications next. So LOB apps, even though they've been around for decades and people have used them, they can be complicated and inefficient to use. Mainly because employees are struggling with just the sheer number of these applications. Oftentimes, these applications have been developed organically or maybe come to your company as part of an acquisition. As a result, there are significant differences between these applications in how you use them. So if a worker is assigned a business task, they may find themselves switching between these applications, causing a loss of context. There's a researcher in Microsoft Research, Jamie Teven, and she talks about micro-productivity. And she talks about how workers can use small fragments of time efficiently if all the information they need for that action is available in that context. And because they're having to switch between these line of business applications, they are essentially doing a context switching, which is inherently inefficient. Further exacerbating this problem is the fact that people are looking for a mobile-first experience. So people are quite used to using their consumer applications on their phones, and they want a similar behavior from their line of business application as well. So as a result, we are seeing more and more demand on building a mobile equivalent for the line of business applications much faster than IT departments can indeed deliver. So you're wondering from the previous slide that there are a number of challenges with the line of business applications and even harder to mobile enable them. Why aren't we just converting those to off-the-shelf software as a service offerings, which seem to be getting richer every day? And while that's true, we certainly should use off-the-shelf applications, SaaS applications, if we can. But there are many scenarios where off-the-shelf SaaS application may not completely fit your needs. Maybe you have a security requirement. Maybe you have an on-premises system. Maybe you have a unique requirement that requires the continued use of a line of business application. So the other option, of course, is to go ahead with the traditional software development of this mobile application, which can be time-consuming and expensive. As we talked about in the previous slide, oftentimes IT departments don't have the resources to undertake these built-from-ground-up mobile applications. So as a result, what we are seeing today is everything in between. These opportunities for productivity enhancements are being lost because there's no in-between technology to create these applications. So really the motivation for this course is there needs to be a different approach for building these applications. We want to be able to build these applications rapidly, and it should not be limited just to professional developers, even though I make a case in this course that as professional developers, we are always looking for ways to expedite how we deliver applications to our customers. This is certainly a tool. So we really need a different approach which allows us to build these applications in a manner that they're cross-platform. They can reach the devices of choice that our users have, and they take less time. We're talking hours and days to build these applications quickly, to be able to connect these applications to the various backends. So what is this new approach for building applications? Of course, the focus of this course is Power Apps and how you can quickly build these applications. But before I talk about Power Apps, it's helpful to take a step back and understand the overall platform that Power Apps tool is part of and the overall investments that are being made. And hopefully this will help you understand why it's important to learn a tool like Power Apps. So if you look at the top layer of this diagram, you'll see things like the systems of record, ISV and partner applications that you may have procured, Office 365, Dynamics 365. Together they represent back-end business logic that may exist within your organization. So directly underneath that are a series of power tools that allow you to rapidly build applications based on this back-end logic. These tools are designed for rapid application development, and they are not limited to professional developers. In fact, non-professional developers, volunteer developers, citizen developers, even Power Business users can have access to this tool set. What is really important is the layer below the Power tier is a Pro Dev tier. So in the past, the industry has made a number of attempts to build these rapid application tools that were approachable to non-professional developers. And while they did well for that aspect of rapid application development, but as soon as you hit a limit or a limitation on those tools, there was a chasm between the power tools and the traditional tools used by professional developers. What is really interesting about the business application platform is these tools and the extensibility mechanisms are baked into this platform. So, for example, you might start out in Power Apps. You may build an application quickly using the programming language called formulas, which we'll talk about later in the course. But if you hit into a limitation where you're trying to implement a complicated piece of business logic, you can very easily drop into a Pro Dev tool and take advantage of that extensibility. So perhaps you can write that piece of business logic in a serverless compute through Azure Functions. Maybe you want to implement a long-running workflow. Maybe you can take advantage of Azure Logic Apps and then combine it with the application that you have built using Power Apps. So in this manner, you have this ability to build these applications quickly. Equally important is the fact that you can build this application once and then target multiple platforms, whether it is an Android phone, an iOS device, or a Windows Store application. So you're able to build this application and then reach out to the largest set of your users, at the same time maintaining a single code base. So that's business application platform. Next, we will drill into specifically into Power Apps and Flow. So what is Power Apps? Power Apps is a service for building business applications that are cross-platform. So you're probably asking a question to yourself, why is it a service? Why is it just not an IDE that you can just install on your machine and build these applications? It is a service because it offers a number of other capabilities that can expedite the development of these applications. For example, it offers you this ability to manage multiple versions. It offers you the capability to publish these applications across multiple devices, iOS, Android, Windows Store, etc. It allows you to not have to worry about the security mechanism that is provided to you. We also talked about how Power Apps can connect to a number of different backend systems. The service also maintains the connections to these applications. And finally, the service also gives you policies like the ones we talked about, the data loss protection policies. So as you can see, in addition to the IDE, there are a number of capabilities that this service is offering. You can see in this diagram, creating an app is really a three-step process. You connect to a data system that may exist already or maybe a new data system. Then you build an app using a designer. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then ultimately, you can start using this app on a mobile device, iOS, Android, Windows device, or you can use it from a web browser. So as you can see, you can target a wide variety of your users in this process. Let's look at the designer for a moment. So the designer itself is called the Power Apps Studio. It is a Windows Store application. Another version of this designer is available on the web, so you can do the development across different platforms. If you look at the designer itself, it's comprised of a visual designer where you can create forms and screens. And even though you are building these forms and screen once, you can target multiple platforms. And in fact, you can take advantage of native platform capabilities like cameras, GPS, controls, etc. On the right, you have the business logic that you can apply. And you don't use languages like C# to build applications. Instead, you're using an Excel-inspired expression language, which we'll be looking into in a lot of detail as part of the second module. And then finally, you can extend the capabilities by connecting to backend data sources. And then connecting to a backend data source and then binding it to visual elements on your designer essentially is how the Power App Studio works. Even though this course is about Power Apps, I want to briefly talk about Microsoft Flow. Think of it as a companion service to the Power Apps. Microsoft Flow is another service like Power Apps, and it is designed for automating workflows across your apps and services. So think of a piece of logic that needs to be executed in response to an event, or think of a piece of logic that is long-running in nature. Both are good examples of what would be easily implemented inside Microsoft Flow. So you start out by connecting to a data source, and this could be a data source similar to the ones we talked about in the context of Power Apps. But in this case, we are talking about a change that may happen in one of these data sources. Maybe a new record got added to an entity within the Dynamics 365. And once that event occurs, we call them trigger inside Microsoft Flow. Once that trigger happens, then an action can take place, and an action could be a number of built-in actions that are available inside Microsoft Flow. In fact, let me show you a quick example of that. So this is a view of the Microsoft Flow designer. In this case, the trigger is the event. And in this case, the event happens to be a lead record got added to, as I said earlier, Dynamics 365 entity. And once that trigger arrives, we have defined the action that needs to take place. And this is a very simple action amongst the many actions that are available inside Flow that we'll be looking at later in the course. In this case, we are invoking the email action. And notice here that we are comprising this or creating this email that needs to go out in response to this trigger. And we are using, of course, the properties of the record that got added inside Dynamics 365. So you can imagine a scenario where you can combine Flow with Power Apps to create these applications that react to events. And then people can go back to Power Apps and look at the updated data, for example, or take action based on that. One thing I touched upon in the previous slide was that Power Apps is a service that allows you to publish these applications quickly. If you have done any mobile development, you know that you have to go through the sometimes onerous process of publishing your apps to the App Store and waiting for approval, and then even to make changes, you have to go through the same process. One of the things that the Power Apps service does for you is it allows you to publish these applications to your users without having to go through the App Store. And the concept is very simple. There is a Power Apps application on every platform that we talked about, Android, iOS, Windows Store. And the applications that you developed essentially sit on top of that base application. So you really don't have to publish your individual applications in this manner. So that's an important concept to understand. And then the other thing I want to talk about, I've been talking about multiple data sources, and I gave you an example of Dynamics 365 entity and maybe Office 365, but I should point out that there are close to 130 such connectors or opportunities to talk to different systems that are available. And this slide shows you some of these: SharePoint, Salesforce, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. And then you always have this ability to take a custom API that you may have developed, whether it is running in the cloud or on-prem, and then be able to access that from the Power Apps Studio as well. It's time for a quick demonstration. I'm going to bring up 3 different Power Apps. And to make it easy for you to go try this on your own, I've picked 3 samples that are available as part of the Power Apps Studio. The idea is to just show you the kinds of applications that you can build using Power Apps. Let me start out with the first application called Service Desk. And this is what the application looks like. And imagine that you're running a service desk of some sort and you want a very quick system to track the incoming requests or tickets. And perhaps you are maintaining the tickets in some backend system. Maybe you're maintaining them in Dynamics 365 or another SaaS provider, off-the-shelf SaaS provider. And you're wanting to build an application quickly in hours and days that gives you access to all the tickets in progress across multiple devices so that people can keep track of what's happening. So this is a very simple system. On the top, you can see the total tickets, shows you the tickets in progress. I can very quickly create a new ticket here. And let's just say my printer is not working. That's my problem here. In this case, description created by Vishwas. And let's select a priority of medium. And I work for the HR department. So a very simple system. Let's just go ahead and create this ticket. As you can see, I can filter by the ticket. So let's just see if this ticket did indeed get created. So yes, the printer not working. I can come in here and then assign it. I've not implemented all of the permissions here, but assuming that I log on as a supervisor, I can then come in here and assign this to Nigel. And let's save this. And then Nigel can come in and update the status to closed or fix the problem or whatever the case may be. So once again, very quick application available across multiple devices. Let me bring up another application called the Site Inspection, another sample that is available as part of the Power Apps Studio. And imagine that you are a construction company and you have some sort of an ERP backend where your customers call in and they want some piece of work done, and you need to send out inspectors on site to evaluate the work that needs to be performed. And even though you have this ERP system, you don't have a good way of enabling this capability in the hands of your inspectors who are on the road all the time. And once again, this is a quick example of what you can do with that. Build this application very quickly. So let's just take a look at one of the inspections. Let's just go ahead and edit. You can see here, these are the notes that I took for that building. I can also use the native camera on the device that I have in my hands. And here are the pictures from the camera. I can even annotate these pictures. And then, of course, I can use the GPS to know my current address, or I can have the user enter their address here as well. So once again, a quick application built on top of perhaps your existing ERP system that may be available. The third application that I want to show you is similar, some sort of an asset checkout system. So you're running a lab of some sort that has a bunch of equipment, and maybe you don't have a backend system to manage it. Maybe all you're doing is you're managing who has what equipment in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. And even though people can go in and update that spreadsheet, that's not always the optimal thing to do. Instead, you can very quickly build a Power App on top of that Excel spreadsheet. In fact, in this instance, all of this data is indeed coming from an Excel spreadsheet. So I can bind my Power App to that Excel spreadsheet and then show the information in the sheet. In this case, you can see the various devices that are available for checkout. I can go in and select a keyboard and say I want to check this out. And it knows that I've logged on with my credentials here. I can go ahead and reserve this equipment for these many days. Let's just go ahead and reserve this. And now this equipment has been reserved. Others can come in and see what is the new stock for the equipment that I just checked out. I can also come in and see, show me the equipment that is most often being checked out, show me the equipment by the reviews that it has received, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the kinds of applications that you can build very quickly using Power Apps. And as part of this course, we'll learn how to build these kinds of applications quickly. So with this, we conclude the first module of the course, Introduction to Power Apps and Flow. See you in module number 2. Thank you. So now that we have seen a quick demonstration of Power Apps, it's time to talk about how you can get hold of Power Apps and you can start playing with this. First and foremost, Power Apps and Flow are included with select Office 365 and Dynamics 365 plans. So if your organization has those, then you have already access to Power Apps and Flow. If not, your administrators can purchase licenses for you and then assign it to you. And then finally, and probably most importantly for this course, there is a community plan which is free. You can use it for learning and building your skills. Of course, you can't use this plan to put applications in production, but this is a generous plan which allows you access to even the premium connectors, as we will see later. And once again, allows you to help you build your skills and help you learn this technology easily. So with this, we come to the end of this module. In this module, we talked about line of business applications, their key characteristics, why they're complicated and inefficient, why employees are looking for a mobile-first experience, and how we need to change how we build business applications that are cross-platform ready, that bring sort of the same characteristics of the consumer applications. And in this context, we talked about the business application platform, and more specifically, we talked about Power Apps and Flow. Using this, you can build cross-platform applications rapidly. We're talking hours and days with minimal amount of code. You can connect to existing data sources or new services that you are building. So in summary, Power Apps is this rapid application technology that allows you to build line of business applications and gives you a way to alleviate the challenges that your organization faces in using line of business applications. Thank you for watching the first module. See you in module number 2.